There's a forest whose size and shapes come almost from beyond the realms of the imagination. It's among the most surprising, the rarest and most extraordinary forests in the world. Its trees are mysterious and ancient, bearing their heavy burdens of symbolism and legend. Their trunks hollow and twisted in ways that defy belief. Diminutive in stature, with tortured bodies, some more than 1,000 years old, these trees provide shelter for an endless number of animals. A well-ordered forest, which despite its unworldly appearance, is the foundation of a unique ecosystem, a refuge for wildlife in the heart of territories exploited by mankind. A forest that grows in military formation, a vast army, standing guard over a varied fauna, nurturing a rich and complex habitat. The forests of the European olive have their home around the basin of the Mediterranean Sea. They stretch across Greece, Turkey in the Middle East and North Africa. But their most significant territory is found on the Iberian Peninsula in Spain, and more specifically in Andalusia. While all around the planet virgin forests succumb to man's advances, olive trees are gaining ground. At the beginning of the 21st century, more than 11 million hectares are under cultivation. That makes it the largest permanent plantation on Earth. And it's larger even than the surface areas of Cuba and Portugal. The largest proportion of this plantation, 73%, is made up by the traditional olive groves that grow slowly, unhurriedly around the Mediterranean Sea. And Andalusia is the jewel in this crown. This peculiar woodland abounds with surprises. Such as this Egyptian mongoose, the only species of mongoose native to Europe. This energetic and efficient carnivore is a common sight within this ecosystem. In the Andalusian olive groves, the rhythm of life pulsates uninterrupted. Their status as a true forest may be arguable, but what is beyond question is that the vastness of the territory that the olive groves occupy, the age of many of their trees, and the richness of the ecosystem they support mean that they constitute a woodland that throbs with life. Biologists do not consider these olive groves to be simply part of a cultivated crop. The ecosystem that surrounds them is very similar to that of the original Mediterranean forests. So olive groves are, in fact, very like secondary forest, very close to the primitive forest. and are home to such high levels of biodiversity, with many endemic Mediterranean species living here. In fact, the olive grove can be considered cleared forest of ancient olives. The wild ancient olive is the direct predecessor, the sylvestris variety of the modern Olea europaea. The only difference is the thorns that protect its branches, its more rounded leaves, and its smaller fruit. Regardless of their origins, life in the olive groves is abundant and potent, bustling throughout the year and on a variety of scales. On the one hand, the enormously rich microcosm that flourishes around this legendary tree, which seems to be reborn at the beginning of each spring. The tree's leaves and tiny flowers become a battleground. The most sensitive parts of the tree and its attending court are besieged by plagues of moths, woodlice, and aphids. Tiny, voracious pests that reproduce at a staggering rate. But even so, these invading forces cannot live in peace. The olive trees have allies that act decisively. The larvae of ladybirds, very different in appearance from their parents, are fierce monsters on a tiny scale. Like the adults of the species, ladybird young are vital in controlling pests within the olive groves. They're a true and natural ecological insecticide. The larvae of lacewings, another beautiful insect, collaborate with the olives in the same way, hunting and devouring the tasty aphids, squeezing them as if they were sweet, sugary fruits. Survival up on the branches of the olive trees is a daily struggle. And at the foot of the tree, a similar battle is played out. Another fearsome predator is on the hunt, but this one has additional artillery. Its deadly, fast-acting venom with which it will inject its helpless victims. Scorpions are a species of arachnid, and so are related to spiders. And they too contribute significantly to the control of insect populations in the olive grove. This strange-looking cricket is one of the insects on the scorpion's menu. It's an Ibero-Moroccan endemism, and its presence in the olive groves confirms the biological wealth of this orderly forest. Its appearance is unusual among crickets. The purpose of the extension that protrudes from its head like a strange visor has not, as yet, been discovered. But perhaps its main use is in defense and attack, like the antlers of deer disputing their territory and harems. Both the crickets and the olive groves can withstand the protracted drought with relative ease. What's more, the olive trees also help in slowing down the processes of erosion in these semi-desert territories. This ability to tolerate very hot climates is shared by the scorpions. Common scorpions frequent the olive groves of the Mediterranean, where they hide in cool, dark places during the day, lying in wait. As evening draws in, so the time of the hunt approaches. Scorpions feed on other arthropods, and in particular, insects. They stalk their prey, catching them with their powerful pincers before injecting them with their paralyzing venom. Once immobilized, the meal is devoured immediately. Almost like it were enjoying a milkshake, in this case of grasshopper, the scorpion sucks its meal dry. The saliva of scorpions contains very powerful enzymes that dissolve and digest the hard cuticles of insects. The scorpion then has only to drink the resulting liquid. Although many of the plants and animals in the olive grove have adapted to the drought and heat, in spring, the landscape of this geometrical forest turns colorful. In 1 hectare of traditional olive grove, more than 100 species of plants may be found. In Andalusia, that number may reach several hundreds, many of which are of exclusively Mediterranean origin. The richness and diversity of flora associated with the olive habitats correspondingly increases the diversity of insects found here. The large abdomen of the female red-striped oil beetle makes it one of the most unusual and largest beetles in Europe. They compensate for their relative clumsiness and limited ability to hide from predators by being able to secrete an extremely toxic substance, cantharidin, that irritates the skin and causes blisters. Hence, it can go about its meal on the floor of the olive grove peacefully and untroubled. The ecological network that survives around the olive trees is enriched further with many small mammals intrinsically linked to the Mediterranean ecosystem. This is a European or common rabbit. The olive groves are an ideal ecosystem for rabbits, as they offer a diversity of plants in high quantities and, equally important, a safe and comfortable place to shelter. The trunks of the oldest olive trees exhibit impressive scars. Each nook and cranny is well utilized by the local fauna. The prolific rabbits use them as a home, and their young are born inside the tree. These almost newborn rabbits are blind and deaf, but are still able to detect the arrival of their mother, from whom they are anxious to suckle. At first, they only receive 1 dose a day of her very nutritious milk. Within little more than 4 months, they themselves will be breeding adults, a vital link in the ecological chain of this ecosystem. But rabbits are not the only ones to take advantage of what the generous olive trees offer. A multitude of birds nest in their recesses, such as the hoopoe. Hoopos catch the insects that swarm nearby in order to feed their brood. Bees are not usually part of the hoopoe's menu. They construct their hives deep inside trees, and the olive trees are perfect for this. The wealth of flora in the olive grove allows the bees to harvest plenty of pollen and nectar. The next generation of bees matures at great speed within the olive tree, protected from the inclemencies of the elements outside. By maintaining its green foliage, the olive grove provides a comfortable microclimate in its interior. In summer it is cool, and in winter it protects against cold and wind. The shade of its trees also shields and keeps the bushes that live around the trunks and that hares and rodents depend on fresh. The olive grove has its share of predators too. Hares, rabbits, pigeons and small birds all constitute the daily diet of a wide variety of hunters, such as small hawks. This common kestrel has had a good day. She has managed to catch a prey as big as herself. The amount of meat that this dove provides will allow the kestrel to replenish her forces after the hunt and still have enough to feed her entire clutch, which may be 4 or 5 hungry chicks. At the foot of the olive tree, this scorpion is not at all comfortable. The ants are guarding their territory and the nest at its heart jealously. They will do everything they can to drive the scorpion away. During spring and summer, the entire population of the anthill is busy caring for its pupae and larvae. These are the future of the community, but they are also a delicious and nutritious food for other species. The western three-toed skink, found more commonly in the damper corners of the olive grove, has made it advance against the anthill and is delighting in filling up on the ants' larvae and pupae. Once his appetite has been sated, he will return to the grove to warm up again. But for the ants, there is no respite. The olive grove is also an ideal forest, sunny, warm and full of food for various species of lizard. They move as they please among the trunks, vegetation and clods of earth. It is now the turn of this lizard, a large Samodromus, to attack the anthill, where it fills its stomach with succulent larvae. This Mediterranean lizard is an awesome predator on a small scale. And yet the ants still do not surrender. they manage to save many of their offspring. And their effort will be rewarded when these pupae hatch, providing fresh troops to defend the anthill. While the ever-active ants recover from their calamities, cicadas sing overhead, camouflaged on the branches of the trees. In the summer, after the reproductive season, the olive groves are visited by some animals that do not come here in spring. Now, however, they seek relief in the shade of the trees. And while they're here, they find food resources that are often not available on the treeless plains. Some even come specifically to hunt the small vertebrates that inhabit the olive trees, such as mice. In the least frequented areas of the grove, the density of wildlife multiplies. This is a favored hunting ground for the mongoose. Mice, snakes, and other small animals are abundant. All are potential prey for the mongoose, with its highly acute senses, its speed and agility, and a set of extremely sharp teeth. Some olive groves are so large that in their interiors they still guard solitary and inaccessible lakes. Some of these small lakes, such as the one in La Thoñar in Andalusia, serve as a last refuge to critically endangered species, such as the white-headed duck. At one point, there were barely a dozen individuals of this species surviving, isolated in the heart of the immense olive groves. But surrounded and protected by the olive trees, they began a slow recovery, eventually allowing them to be taken off the list of endangered animals. The arrival of autumn seems to herald little change in the olive groves that saved the white-headed duck. But the fruit of the trees, the highly appreciated olive, begins to mature. In fact, it is a moment of very significant change in this strange geometric forest, as the olives are a highly nutritious and complete food source that attracts dozens of new species to come here. Great bustards once again take up residence in the olive groves as they search for fruit that has fallen from the trees. Depending on the region and the local climate, the olives may mature anywhere between November and March. An impressive number of migratory birds populate the olive groves throughout the autumn. Some will remain all the winter, stocking up on food and safe in the haven of the trees. Almost all the birds that pass through here will be tempted by the ripe olives. although some appear to be satisfied with merely drinking the water that drips from the fruit, like this blackcap. There are many varieties of olives, but all have a fleshy fruit which is very rich in energy, sodium, fiber, and vitamin E. Many of the animals that now consume the olives were actively involved in reducing the plagues of insects during the spring. One way or another, the olive groves repay the debt they owe their protectors. Starlings, lesser whitethroats, greenfinches, warblers, the small birds of the olive grove that eliminated massive numbers of insects in the spring, now in the depth of winter, survive thanks to the fruit of the trees they have protected. Even doves pay a visit during the relentless winter. The dove and the olive tree. Universal symbols of peace, the bird carrying in her beak a slim branch of the twisted and old tree, able to withstand heavy rain, frost and drought, and to create a rich, diverse, and strangely geometrical forest.